Imagine this, March 13, 1954. Dawn breaks over the mist-shrouded valleys of Dien Bien Phu in northwestern Vietnam. Thick jungle vines drip with relentless monsoon rain, transforming the rugged terrain into a quagmire of red mud that sucks at boots and wheels alike. French General Christian de Castries, a battle-hardened veteran with a monocle glinting in the pale light, climbs to the top of his reinforced command bunker. He raises his binoculars, scanning the horizon, where his elite paratroopers, freshly dropped from the skies, have meticulously positioned their heavy artillery batteries amid the elephant grass and bamboo thickets. To the generals in Paris, sipping cognac in gilded ministries, this is military brilliance incarnate, a massive anvil dropped deep into Viet Minh territory, designed to lure Ho Chi Minh's elusive guerrillas into a decisive, open-field slaughter. French headlines blare triumph. Dien Bien Phu will reclaim Indochina, that glittering crown jewel yielding endless streams of rice from the Delta paddies, rubber from Cochinchina plantations, and coal from Haiphong mines, all funneling wealth back to a war-weary metropolis. The empire seems unbreakable, its officers toasting to victory over dinner rations flown in by Dakota transports. But there's a problem. No one in those Parisian salons has the foggiest notion of the invisible economic noose tightening around France's neck. Beneath the veneer of colonial grandeur, the French economy teeters on collapse from World War II devastation. Reconstruction loans pile up, inflation gnaws at the franc, and Indochina already devours nearly 20% of the national budget by 1953 through ceaseless subsidies, troop salaries, and ammunition shipments across stormy seas. Meanwhile, deep in the Cu Chin Pass, Vo Nguyen Giap's Viet Minh porters, hundreds of thousands of sinewy peasants with calloused hands, methodically disassemble 260 heavy artillery cannons, each barrel over 2 tons, lashing them to bicycle frames padded with rice sacks. These human caravans snake 300 kilometers over sheer mountain cliffs and leech-infested trails, evading French patrols under cover of night. No factories hum for them. Funding trickles from a clandestine economy of village rice levies in liberated zones, about 10% of harvest yields, and covert Chinese shipments slipping through porous borders. It's not a clash of steel titans against spear-wielding primitives, as de Castries boasts in his dispatches. It's a bankrupt European relic, its treasury hemorrhaging billions, stumbling blindly into a Vietnamese resilience machine forged in famine and ingenuity, one pedal stroke at a time. The tragic irony is that the very rice France coveted now fuels its doom. How does a nation of rice farmers, their GDP a fraction of any invader's, dismantle 3 global empires, France, America, China, not with bayonets or bombs, but by methodically draining their coffers until retreat becomes the only rational ledger entry? To understand this hidden economic masterstroke, we must peel back the fog of war and examine the forces at work. Dien Bien Phu wasn't a sudden thunderclap. It echoed centuries of Vietnamese defiance. From repelling 13th-century Mongol hordes to withstanding Ming occupations that scarred the Red River Delta. Fast forward to 1945, as Japanese forces crumble, Ho Chi Minh proclaims independence from Hanoi's Ba Dinh Square, quoting the U.S. Declaration amid Allied cheers. Yet France, humiliated by Vichy collaboration and desperate for redemption, dispatches gunboats up the Mekong, clinging to Indochina, a vast federation exporting 2 million tons of rice yearly by the 1930s, bankrolling 44% of its colonial budget via ruthless monopolies on opium dens in Hanoi alleys, salt flats along the coast, and alcohol distilleries churning firewater for peasant throats. These revenues didn't build schools, they paved boulevards for French planters lounging on verandas. Main players sharpen into focus. France, post-war pauper posing as potentate, investing 6.7 million francs by 1940 in railroads and ports to siphon rubber, vital for tires, and coal, powering steel mills back home. Opposite stands the Viet Minh, peasant revolutionaries under Ho and Giap, taxing minimally in free zones, controlling 1 million hectares by 1950, blending land reform with guerrilla logistics. Shadows lengthen. America, fearing communism's spread, foots 78% of French war bills by 1954 via the Mutual Defense Assistance Act. China, newly red, funnels rifles across Yunnan trails. Stakes tower existential. France risks bankruptcy, war costs equaling 10% of GDP by 1954 amid strikes paralyzing Renault factories. Vietnam bets everything on attrition, outlive the foreigners feeding on imported fuel while locals eat what they grow. Prior history condenses brutally. French conquest from 1858 via Saigon forts shattered village communes, imposing taxes sparking 1945 famine, killing 2 million. Yet this forge tempered a nationalist self-sufficiency, cooperatives hiding grain from tax collectors. To understand how Vietnam economically dismantled 3 empires, we have to delve into those subterranean forces, beginning with the French snare that ensnared its maker. France sails into Indochina not as liberators, but ledger keepers. Paul Doumer, steely governor-general from 1897 to 1902, etches the blueprint. 2,600 kilometers of railroads claw through Annamite Mountains, hauling Tonkin coal and Cochinchina rice to Haiphong docks, where freighters groan under 500,000-ton annual loads. Harbors swell with exports. Corvée gangs. Peasants press-ganged at bayonet point. Pave roads linking plantations. By 1920, Crown monopolies on opium, smoked in 80% of Hanoi households, salt pans and rice wine distilleries capture 44% of the budget, 600 million piastres yearly, trapping Vietnam as a vast open-air market for Bordeaux wines and lion silks. Peasants toil dawn to dusk, rubber sap staining hands red, only to remit harvests funding Eiffel Tower luxuries. It gleams promising, metropolitan factories hum on colonial bounty. Doumer boasts, civilizing mission pays dividends. Investments crest 6.7 million francs by 1940, outpacing all but Algeria, alchemy turning paddy mud into steady franc flows amid rising European tensions. Ho Chi Minh's Viet Minh pierce the facade. August 1945, post-Hiroshima, they storm Hanoi granaries, redistributing French-held estates across 5 million acres in liberated zones from Tai Nguyen to Quang Ngai, abolishing rents, slashing taxes to 5% of yield, ending famine that starved 400,000 in 1945 alone. Peasants flock, tilling with renewed vigor. Fast forward to 1954. De Castries, cigar clenched, green lights Operation Castor, drops 10,000 legionnaires into Dien Bien Phu Valley March 7th, erecting 49 strongpoints ringed by barbed wire and 155 mm guns. Gamble? Lure Giap's divisions from Laos supply lines, pulverize with napalm and naval gunfire. Urgent French plight, treasury hemorrhages, 500 billion francs annually by 1953 on Indochina. 20% national expenditure, U.S. aid covering 80%, yet scandals erupt over profiteering shippers. Rational, one knockout blow ends 8-year drain. But there's a problem. Giap, map unfurled in a jungle cave, rejects the bait. His 50,000 troops, farmers turned fighters, encircle silently. Over 50 days, 200,000 porters bicycle dismantle 260 artillery pieces. Japanese Type 94s, French 105s captured at Chaobang, padding frames with 400 kilos rice per load, navigating 15-degree slopes, slick with rain. French spotters atop Hill 800 see ghosts. Airdrops plummet into mud, 80% lost. Viet Minh feast on zone rice, 80% northern villages controlled, yielding 1.2 million tons yearly taxed lightly, fashioning ammo from scrap, costing 100th French airlift, each Dakota sortie 2 million francs. Complications cascade, monsoon floods, airstrip, pilots evade, 37 mm flak, losses 10% sorties, scurvy ravages, trenches. De Castries radios bravado, magnificent view, but ledgers scream retreat. Paris ignores, Mendes France pledges cash. But Giap's chain endures. Local forges mend barrels, women weave sandals from tires. Short sentences strike. Guns thunder nightly, ammo dwindles daily, but hope fades hourly. Legionnaires ration cigarettes, bayonets fixed. Giap's waves crash relentlessly. France funnels 1,000 sorties, futile. May 7 dawns. De Castries yields 11,000 prisoners amid white flags. Geneva Accords partition nation, July 1954. France slinks home, empire ledger crimson. But this trap merely whets appetites. America lurks. Uncle Sam strides on stage, domino theory etched in marble. Eisenhower, Dien Bien Phu, ashes cooling, unleashes $2.6 billion aid to Diem South by 1964. 80% munitions, birthing Saigon miracle. Boulevards gleam with Fords. GI bars pulse. GDP climbs 4.5% annually. 1960s on import boom. Yet mirage shimmers. 500,000 troops inject $10 billion war-spent cash. Black markets hawk PX goods. Inflation balloons 200% by 1970. Piasters worthless. Orphans scavenge. Washington cheers containment. Arm ARVN 700,000 strong. Fortify DMZ. Promising ledger. Advisors tout pacification. Instead of forts, excellence rains fire. Rolling Thunder 1965 unleashes 864,000 tons bombs, thrice W3 Pacific. Agent Orange withers 20% forests, 4.5 million acres. B-52s carpet Quang Tri. Ho shifts. Hanoi disperses 1.3 million civilians to 6,000 hamlets. Austerity decrees limit cloth to 2 outfits yearly. Bicycles rule, 2 million imported. Soviets China counter, 2 million tons aid yearly snakes. Ho Chi Minh Trail, 40,000 builders hack 12,000 miles through Karst, dodging sensor bombs. But there's a problem. U.S. marcha. Tab skyrockets to $168 billion total by 1975. Today's $1 trillion, gnawing 1.5–2.5% GDP yearly. LBJ's guns butterbind sparks riots, gold outflows. North holds, despite 70% industry raised. 1968 Tet repairs factories overnight. Peasants harvest 6 million tons rice in triple-cropped deltas, hidden by dikes. Desperation crests. Nixon's 1969 Vietnamization slashes $3 billion aid. ARVN reels, sands air cover. Corruption siphons fuel. What they don't realize, trails brilliance. 20,000 trucks nightly. 80% losses, replaced free. Vietnam outlay $100 million as U.S. $30 billion bombing. Short bursts, jets scream, villages rebuild, dollars burn. Hanoi rations power, wills victory. Tensions peak. April 30th, 1975. Tanks crash. Palace gates. Helicopters whirl off embassy roof. South crumbles. Economy implodes. 700% inflation. 1976. But unified Vietnam, rice silos full, turns gaze north. China stirs. Beijing boils. Deng Xiaoping, Vietnam's December 1978. Cambodia blitz ousting Khmer Rouge puppets. Rallies 600,000 PLA for lesson February 17, 1979. Tanks rumble across Friendship Pass into Lang Son. Hanoi, 1978. Soviet pact sealed. Summons 1 million. Reserves from Cu Chi tunnels. Deng's urgency. Post-Mao prestige. PLA purge recovery. 500,000 officers sacked. Solid bet. China's $150 billion GDP towers. Vietnam's 10 billion factories spit T-59s. Vietnam unleashes readiness. Le Duan mobilizes total 2 million militia. Women, children trench. Lang Son Hills. Cao Bang encircled. Rations 10 kilograms rice monthly. Tax person. Co-ops yield 8 million tons despite drought. Full consequences bare. PLA advances stall in minefields. Logistics falter 500 kilometers Kunming trails. Fuel theft rampant. Toll. China hemorrhages 3.45 billion yuan, 6% budget. 1979 reforms delayed quarters. Vietnam weathers. Soviet SA-2s bag 85 jets. But there's a problem. PLA green. Conscripts falter in monsoons. Commissars bribe posts. Vietnam's 200,000 vets. 30-year honed, ambush relentlessly, reclaiming Dongdang. And that's when everything changed. March 16th pullback, Dung Totes win, but 28,000 dead, 62,000 wounded, division shattered. Vietnam stands, economy scarred yet sovereign. Emotional zenith, Ha Giang farmers, hoes beside AKs, behold retreating columns, the anvil strikes thrice. But rewind, France billions lost, surrendered. America debt drowned, evacuated. China momentum killed. Chain unbreakable. Overreach invites endurance. Rational Dung halts wisely. Giap, as I've traced his passes, genius empathetic. Farmer's son, outthinking mandarins. Short punch, hills run red, supplies rot. But Vietnam endures eternally. Ripples crash immediate. Dien Bien Phu fall. France slashes into China outlays, zeros aid by 1956, pivot to EEC boom. America 1975. Congress axes funds. Saigon hyperinflates 700%. 1976. 2 million refugees flee. China. 1979. Dung fast-tracks openness, yet skirmishes bleed till 1991. Hanoi-Beijing Accord. Vietnam reunites. U.S. embargo bites till 1994, yet Doi Moi 86 unleashes 7 to 8% GDP growth 1990s. Poverty halves. Decades unfold legacies. France accelerates Algeria Grant 1962, dodging deeper pits. U.S. Vietnam syndrome curbs adventures till 1991, Gulf. China-Vietnam thaw, 1991, bilateral trade explodes 100 billion 2023, rivals remade partners. Today gleams vindication, Vietnam poverty plunges 58%, 1993 to 2.5%, 2023, FDI $23 billion yearly 2024, Samsung hubs hum Da Nang. As historian who's walked Mekong trails, this isn't anomaly. It's template. This teaches that endurance eclipses empire. It's not firepower, but fields that fell foes. It's not conquest, but coffers that crumble. The tragic irony, invaders sought riches, exited ruined. However, truth endures. Vietnam's alchemy transmutes invasion into ascent. Parallels pulse modern. Afghanistan saps U.S. $2.3 trillion 2001-2021. Taliban reclaims science factories. Ukraine drains Russia. 10 to 15% GDP yearly since 2022. Factories idle amid missiles. Locals grind globals. Pattern stark. Thin budget forever wars empower home soil shadows. But no one sees incoming. To understand tomorrow, master yesterday's ledgers. Economies, silent sovereigns, script falls. Watch keenly.